Hello and welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us here at the North Carolina Museum of Natural Sciences YouTube channel. My name is Chris Smith, and I am your host for our Lunchtime Discovery series. The Lunchtime Discovery series is brought to you by us here at the museum. We put on the show and share it with you right here on YouTube. But it's brought to you, it's booked, it's scheduled, and a lot of the hard work behind it is done by the folks with the Office of Environmental Education within the Department of Environmental Quality. So many thanks to them for helping us put on the program every single week. Today, we've got a great program for you, one that I think you're really going to enjoy. If you love to get outdoors, I think you're going to enjoy this program. And if you think that everybody should have equal access to outdoors and the ability to enjoy the outdoors, then you're going to enjoy this program as well. We're going to be hearing from Diquan Edmonds. He's the Education and Outreach Manager, or soon to be Education and Outreach Manager for the Triangle Land Conservancy. And he's going to share with us some of his work, thoughts, expertise, and insight on equitable outdoor access. Diquan, welcome to the program.
Hey, thanks so much, Chris. Thanks for that great introduction. And I want to, do my part in welcoming everyone. Thanks for, taking this time out of your busy days to sit in front of a screen with me for about the next hour. I know we probably all wish we could, be outside or, something like that. But hopefully this presentation will be engaging for you all. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to sharing something that's near and dear to my heart. So thanks for having me, Chris.
Well, I'm really glad that you could be with us. The Office of Environmental Education has started this environmental justice sub-theme or a series within the Lunchtime Discovery series in order to incorporate diverse experiences and insight and expertise and make sure that we bring everyone along when it comes to getting outdoors and sharing science and nature with everybody. So I'm glad that we can host this and host you. I'm so excited to learn about what you know so much about.
Yeah, great. So I think I'll just dive right into it then. I'm gonna have to utter the most said phrase of 2020, just making sure everyone can see my screen. Can you confirm that, Chris?
It looks great.
Okay, awesome. So yeah, let me just dive right into it. Again, everyone, my name's Diquan Edmonds, and I am the soon-to-be Education and Outreach Manager with the Triangle Land Conservancy. I'm sort of in between, in sort of a job purgatory. I finished my previous role with the North Carolina Recreation and Park Association actually yesterday, and I start up with Triangle Land Conservancy on Monday. So yeah, that's what I do. My background has primarily been in parks and recreation and really just outdoor spaces in general. And I, have some experiences that I've kind of racked up over the years that I'm really proud to, be able to, frame my way of thinking about outdoor recreation. So a bit more about my background. I got my master's degree from North Carolina State University in Parks, Recreation, and Tourism Management. And there, my master's research focused on African-American outdoor recreation involvement. So today I wanted to just do an overview of my study and just, share some of the results and some discussion points with you all. So to kind of start today's talk, I wanted to first take a look at, current outdoor recreation participation rates. This graph on your screen is from a 2017 Outdoor Foundation survey. I've looked at the newest survey and not much has changed, but here we can see African Americans, about 30% of African Americans participated in outdoor activities during that year. And, you see 33%, and I guess it doesn't sound too low, but then when you contrast it with other racial ethnic groups, we see that whites participated at around 50%, Hispanics participated at around 48%, and Asians participated at around 51% also. So we can see there's, you know, just a slight underrepresentation with African Americans. And I just, when we all hear these, stereotypes about Black people don't like the outdoors, Black people don't camp, and, other things along those lines. So I just, wanted to sort of like dive into why is this an important phenomenon that we look at, and B, how did we get to this point? So I guess I'll spend sort of the introduction of my talk talking about that. So yeah, why is this topic important? I'm sure everyone here, just about everyone who's watching today, is involved in the outdoors in some form or fashion. I know there's a lot of like environmental educators and environmental professionals here. So we know we all love the outdoors, right? And I did some research as to the reasons why the outdoors is so important and why equitable access to the outdoors is important. The first thing I wanted to mention is sort of the learning opportunities that being outside in nature, just unlocks in people. It's gives you a chance to kind of explore and learn more about the world and ask those critical questions that explore deeper thought. Next, we all know about the health and wellness benefits of the outdoors, and outdoor recreation in particular has been shown to decrease stress levels, obesity levels, and it lowers the risk of several life-threatening ailments that we all might be suffering from. Next, because we love the outdoors so much, I think it's really important that we share this connection with the outdoors with as many people as possible, so we can sort of like continue to spur that love for the outdoors and create outdoor advocates. So people who are gonna vote for the outdoors when it comes to elections, or maybe donate money to groups who support conservation in the outdoors. So I think in our country, especially with our growing population of people of color, we really need to increase in relevancy as far as outdoor support across the board to ensure that strong support for the outdoors in the future. And then lastly, something that I hadn't really thought about until I started doing research and doing some deeper digging. There's environmental justice concerns that have come up over and over in the literature. For example, let's take national parks or state or local parks. We know that everyone is paying the same taxes that are going towards our public lands, and if there's such a large disparity between people using these lands, it begs the question: are we really reaping the benefits of our tax dollars, for instance? So next, as I alluded to, we see this underrepresentation in outdoor recreation activities, and we also see the benefits of these outdoor activities. I wanted to do some more digging on what has caused this underrepresentation to really come to light. So first, through my research, I looked at the leisure constraints theory. And a quick definition: a leisure constraint is anything that inhibits people's ability to participate in leisure activities, to spend more time doing so, to take advantage of leisure services, or to achieve a desired level of satisfaction. So leisure constraints are broken down into 3 different levels, as you can see on the screen. Those 3 levels are intrapersonal constraints, interpersonal constraints, and structural constraints. intrapersonal constraints are constraints that happen within the individual. So they're normally qualities that just affect the development of leisure preferences. These things can really show up, in language barriers. For instance, if you're trying to travel to a park and you don't speak the language on the sign, that's a constraint that might really affect how you're looking at participation. Next, we have interpersonal constraints. These are more socially based factors that affect the development of leisure preferences. These are things like it might not be acceptable in your culture. You might lack the partners to participate, or you might fear racial related conflict in the outdoors. Lastly, we have structural constraints, which are environmental factors that come between the development of leisure participation. So, these are things that we're all constrained by on some different level. Lack of time. I wish, for me right now in the winter, I wish we had more daylight hours to get outside. Because now that it's getting dark at what it seems to be 4 p.m., it's hard to enjoy that outdoor time after work. And so I understand, like, when you talk about a theory, it's somewhat intimidating, and at least for me it is. And I kind of just wanted to pull out some specific examples and take a deeper look into how this theory and other things that might not even be encompassed in this theory have affected how African Americans experience the outdoors. So I picked a few areas that I believe are really relevant, that I wanted to explore a little deeper and touch on. So first, we have to realize that parks and other outdoor spaces, were segregated at one time, and that greatly restricted access. I remember reading a paper in grad school that was, talking about traveling to remote parks, and while even if the park wasn't segregated, and you could get there and your experience might not even be affected that much, getting there was an issue because there were segregated areas around the park. So you might not be able to stay over at a hotel, or stop at a gas station and fill up your gas tank, or stop at a restaurant and get something to eat, in a way that's safe. So that really sort of shaped the ways that African Americans had to vacation. And I believe this has made its way into forming our leisure preferences today. Next, the outdoors often have been and continue to be unsafe places at times for African Americans and other people of color. I use this picture here because I'm sure we're all familiar with the viral incident that happened in Central Park this past summer, when this lady called the cops on a Black man who was bird watching. I guess they had some sort of interaction, and she called the cops on him for no reason. And I guess, when we're looking at the world and all the tension that's around these issues, that, can create a very dangerous environment and an unsafe environment. We also have the fear of, maybe running into the wrong person when you're outside, or taking a wrong turn and ending up somewhere where, your life could be at risk. So it's really, I guess, like, heavy stuff as to, what has sort of shaped these, the culture today. Next, we have collective memory. So many bad things happen to African Americans in the outdoors, particularly during times of slavery and the Jim Crow era. Violent acts, lynchings, all the horrific things that happen during slavery. And then, it's almost like the outdoors gets associated with, something that's not good. And last, we have gentrification and access. So essentially, this is a map of Durham, North Carolina, where I live. And um, through the process of gentrification, we have sometimes see that, neighborhoods that, are more affluent and maybe not, traditionally Black neighborhoods, the parks are nicer in those areas a lot of time. And, it if all the lower used parks in other areas of town don't have the same resources or equipment there that might be in the nicer area, that is definitely going to impact park use and visitation. So I just wanted to go through those specific examples because I think it really shows how our history has impacted our current culture. And I think it sort of illuminates how these things that have happened in the past can kind of make its way to shaping leisure activities. And then yet another reminder of why all of this is important, just so we all can, keep that in the back of our minds when going through the rest of this presentation. So I know that that was a lot of heavy stuff and just things to make us all, think. And I want to be careful to, talk about that heavy stuff, but then also really help to answer that question of how can we create a more inclusive outdoors. So I got to this point in my career and in my life through I guess my experiences all of my life, but really when I got to graduate school at North Carolina State, I wasn't 100% sold on what I wanted to focus my research on. And then it was a few years ago when I started grad school. It was in 2018, and if you all remember, there was a huge solar eclipse that happened that year. And I left Raleigh and went up to the mountains. It was probably like my second or third week of school to experience the eclipse in totality. And I was looking around, and it seemed like there had to be 1,000 people up on this specific mountain I was on. And I kept looking around, but I didn't see anyone who looked like me. I don't think there was another single person of color up there. And that's when it really hit me that I should focus my research on diversity in the outdoors. And then through further thought, more specifically through African Americans in the outdoors. And through that process of forming my research and when I wanted to study, I found a lot of research on the barriers to the outdoors, some of the things I just quickly went through prior to this, but I didn't find as much about actually getting through those barriers and moving past those barriers to create positive outdoor experiences for African Americans. So my study really just aimed to better understand these experiences by gaining a more holistic view of the experiences and the perceptions that African American outdoor recreationalists face when participating in outdoor activities. So for my study design, I ended up doing a qualitative study to learn more from African American outdoor enthusiasts. And for those who are unfamiliar with my researchy jargon, a qualitative study, in my case, ended up being an interview study. So I basically went about developing an interview guide to help answer the research questions you all see on your screen. And to sum up those questions, they are really just aimed to, first determine the barriers that, people face when participating, but then to move past those barriers and learn about, the facilitators or the negotiation tactics that they use to help get over those barriers. And then lastly, to just talk about the benefits and the motivations they have gained from their outdoor participation. So through this process, in total, I spoke with 14 people from around the nation, aged 18 and up, until I reached what we call data saturation. So that's, the last few of my interviews, I wasn't really learning anything new that I hadn't heard before from the people prior. So I knew I reached a good point where I wasn't really uncovering anything new, and just hearing a lot of the same affirmations over and over. There were two qualifications to take part in my study. So first, individuals had to self-identify as African American, and second, they had to self-identify as an outdoor recreationalist. I didn't want to, just assume that I didn't want to have a set list of activities for people to choose from, because I realized we all might look at the outdoors in different ways, and I'm excited to share some of the results I got from that part. So through these, answers of hours and hours of interviews I had with people, three major themes emerged through my research. The first one were barriers. The second one was, despite these barriers, people were still involved. And then lastly, there were, different motivations that people had to continue participation in outdoor activities. So I just want to go through and talk about findings in each of these levels, so you all can get a deeper understanding of the experiences of these people I talked to. I will apologize. It is going to be a lot of text, but just try to stay with me. I didn't want to leave off anything because I think it's truly important. So first, my first barrier was this thing that I called not what you expected. So through this, my interviewees often felt like they were an oddity. And if you can, pick out from that quote at the bottom, someone shared with me whenever he goes out and he's, deep in the outdoors, people get the sense like, they don't expect to see him out there. He didn't think it was anything like too negative or they perceived him as a big threat or anything like that, but just really they perceived him as an oddity. And I this was just one quote from it, but with all of these quotes, really, they're were confirmed numerous times throughout talking to everyone. Next, people were often the only Black person in certain situations, and it, sort of put a spotlight on them, and I think even further made them feel like an oddity. They were perceived as, beginners by others. So I guess people weren't really used to seeing Black people leading outdoor activities. So, one person I talked to said, people look at him like, does he know what he's doing? Or is this the first time he's done this activity? And then lastly, this kind of not what you expected barrier wasn't, always between like Black people and white people, or, Black people in a different race, but even within Black people within their friends and family groups, there was a lot of like judgment from peers, like, Black people don't do this, like this isn't a Black person thing, it's just a you thing. So next, a big constraint, and I'm sure this is a constraint from all of us, were, time and money. You know, it, I wish I had $1 million to be able to take off from work for a year and hike the Appalachian Trail or something, but it's just not really feasible. And so that's a constraint that's not really unique, but this fear of racially motivated conflicts was something that kept coming up. People, I have one quote here, and, someone I talked to was called a racial slur when they were, at their sleepaway camp. And I wish this was like a one time thing that I heard, but it was, throughout the board, just, hearing these horrible things, being harassed by people. Um, Oftentimes when participating in outdoor activities, you might have to get up at the crack of dawn, or you might be coming back late at night, and you might also be in an area you're not familiar with. And a lot of times in those instances, people, were pulled over by the police and questioned about, what are you doing in the area? Um, I think one of the quotes that really stood out to me from my research was this bottom one, and I'll read it. "There's nothing in the outdoors I'm afraid of except for the people that I might encounter. I'm not afraid of bugs. I'm not afraid of bears, not afraid of the weather, not afraid of the temperature, not afraid of the altitude. It's just mean people." Lastly, I've talked, I guess about, you know, racially motivated conflicts, but I think there's something deeper there, and it just has to do with our outdoor culture in general. And I think this one kind of ties into a lot of the other themes. There is just a general homogenous feeling that people felt, having to act a certain way to be accepted within the group. Someone, expressed they felt like they didn't have the cultural competency or cultural currency to exist in a space. And this was another common theme throughout my research. Also, there was, pressure to, kind of assimilate into this culture in order to fit in, and this kind of materialized in, having to look a certain way, or wear certain brands in order to really fit in. This quote here at the bottom is talking about, how climbers look. They are wearing all these outdoor gear that, might be expensive, and people are, using this lingo, and talking the same and dressing the same. The first quote on this slide talks about, having to buy. This is from someone who was just getting into running, and they felt like they had to buy, all this cool run stuff, that people buy in order to run. So she was telling me that she had just bought headphones, but then realized they weren't like the headphones that all the runners were using. So she felt like she had to buy new headphones in order for it to work. And, it just became a lot to fit in with this culture. So I won't promise this is the last of like the more negative side of things, but I thought it really just illuminates some of these barriers. And but just despite the barriers that I found, the people I talked to still, participated in outdoor recreation at, really a high level. And, it was really something they really identified with, in their heart. So, and part of the way they were involved in outdoor activities was this really broad, more inclusive definition of outdoor recreation. I got, people telling me all sorts of things they consider to be outdoor recreation that we might not think of. So, for instance, tailgating, someone said was an outdoor recreation activity, or playing basketball, soccer, pickup games. It can be any of those things, as well as the more stereotypical outdoor activities. So I just thought it was really interesting. I got a lot of like the quote at the bottom. It's not necessarily one particular thing. Even if you can't do anything but just sit outside and take in the air and the sun, put your fingers in the grass, it's still being connected to nature in a form. And I think that's really important to remember. Next, there was this progression throughout outdoor activities and outdoor recreation that really helped grow people. It normally started when individuals, were kids, but it also materialized in people being introduced to new activities from friends, family, and peers later on in their life. As the quote at the top talks about, a few friends introduced me to hiking, and that was her very first time. And then the one at the bottom, hiking was my first outdoor activity that I tried. Then afterwards, I did rock climbing. Not too long afterwards, I got to do that a few times, and then getting into paddleboarding and kayaking. So we're seeing the learning of new skills and trying new things that really just increase the comfort with the outdoors. Lastly, there was a huge preference to kind of build these communities within outdoor activities, and a preference to participate in activities with others. Of the 14 people I talked to, I'd say that all 14 of them were a part of some sort of outdoor recreation affinity group for African Americans or other people of color. Um, and they created these really, really close knit communities within the outdoors. They were places where people could spend quality time with friends and families, and even encourage more people to participate in outdoor recreation. As we see from the, I guess, both quotes on the screen, but the top one, this person I talked to actually started their own affinity group for the outdoors, and they just wanted to really be a support system for people who didn't want to hike by themselves. So they provide the support for them to be there, and basically show the ropes. The quote on the bottom I thought was really interesting, because these outdoor communities weren't just limited to the physical space of the outdoors, but also through the internet. So this one person I talked to, started a platform where they post pictures of people of color who participate in the outdoors on social media, just to kind of increase that representation aspect, and get more people seeing that, yeah, people of color are competent in the outdoors, and we're extremely good at what we decide to do. So I thought that was also a really interesting thing that I came away with. And then lastly, people were really motivated to keep up this outdoor engagement throughout different stages of their life. So, we all know about the physical health benefits, the mental health benefits also, and then, through these groups, and, being able to participate with your family or with your friends, there were also a lot of social benefits that came from outdoor involvement. And then lastly, there was this idea of, learning through exploration, which I thought was important to bring to us all, because I know there's likely a lot of you on the call today who are, able to do educational programs for people. And someone said it develops your curiosity, because there's so much to see in terms of how nature works. Speaking more to the physical health benefits, I talked to a 70-year-old African-American female. She said she's not on any medications. She doesn't have any of the ailments, and she really attributed that to the outdoors. And then the quote at the bottom, someone, was battling mental health and depression and even attempted suicide. But when she discovered the outdoors, she, had a sense of clarity and a peace of mind that helped her get through that dark time she was going through. So I know that was a lot of information that I went through, but I wanted to kind of talk and focus a discussion on these three topics that I think I think are extremely relevant and important. So first, we saw a progression within outdoor activities, and for you all in the environmental field, I think that's really important for you to know. So, first, as I shared, individuals were normally introduced to the outdoors by key figures in their lives. So, this could be role models, peers, friends, family. A lot of time it was like a scoutmaster or, someone who was proficient in the outdoors and in whatever activity they decided to do and showed them the way. Once that, initial introduction was formed, these environmental competencies were developed. This was sort of like learning how to do these activities in a way that fits them. And one example I'll give is I used to hike all the time, and I realized I wasn't my shoes, my hiking boots kept coming untied, and it wasn't until I met someone else who showed me this cool way to tie my shoes. I never thought I'd be learning a different way to tie my shoes, as an adult, and that kind of fixed the issue. So just picking up those things along the way, and then once you're developing more of these environmental competencies, this idea of environmental expansion occurs where you're kind of moving on from, we saw it in the study with the person who said they tried hiking first and discovered they loved hiking. So then they decided to do rock climbing. And then through that, they just decided to do paddleboarding and kayaking. So really just, introducing someone to the outdoors, letting them get comfortable and get those competencies and they'll want to expand. And then lastly was this sort of idea of you formed an environmental identity where you're, just cementing yourself as someone who is an outdoor enthusiast or someone who likes the outdoors. And, I also wanted to point out that along the way of this like outdoor progression journey, the people I talked to often brought along other people. So they, brought their peers or brought their families along, and introduced them to something that meant a lot in their lives. So I want to stress again that I think people in this environmental field have a really important role, especially in this outdoor introduction aspect. And for more of this, I did a lot of reading on environmental socialization literature. So I would definitely recommend you all to check out that term. Again, that's environmental socialization. So next, one of the barriers that I wasn't expecting to see was outdoor recreation culture emerged as such a huge barrier. If you can remember, they often talked about this culture being homogenous in nature, with everyone looking the same or everyone dressing the same, talking the same. And this was also supported by the literature. I have this quote on the screen that states, "Wildland recreation enthusiasts are generally viewed as young, rugged, and adventurous, and I contend they're almost exclusively perceived as being white." On the service I used to create this presentation, they had stock images, and I just typed in hiking, and these were some of the first images that showed up, I had to scroll to like page 3 to find uh, anyone who looked like they were of color. And we can also see some of these pictures. They're absolutely beautiful, and these locations look really cool. But it's more of this like rugged feel, and more, these look like intense hiking experiences that might be intimidating to people. Um, this also showed itself, and you can sort of see it through um, the pictures on the screen. But people felt like they needed the newest outdoor equipment and outdoor apparel in order to fit in this culture. And you know, I think the outdoor recreation industry as a whole is one of the major economic sectors of the state of North Carolina, but also our country. And I think it sort of creates this culture like we need to keep up and have this newest gear when participating in activities. And then if you don't have the newest gear, people often felt like they were being judged, or they thought that maybe it went into why they were perceived as a beginner. So it's almost like buying the newest Patagonia jacket served as like a coping mechanism. So if I look the part, maybe people will take me serious. And through all of this, it sort of created a social boundary between people who owned the correct gear for the outdoors, and then also with people who didn't own that correct gear. So next, we had a lot of people who really challenged even the definition I had of the great outdoors and outdoor recreation. And so I, through my research, I dove a bit deeper into the formation of like this dominant narrative we have around outdoor recreation and outdoor activities. And through this, I looked at an outdoor recreation textbook, and it contested that the outdoors was created by these pioneers on the screen. So Aldo Leopold, Thoreau, John Muir, Olmsted, Ernest Thomas Sexton, Ralph Waldo Emerson, and Rachel Carson. And we can, see from this picture a few things very easily. All of these people are white, and the majority of these people are male, with the exception of Rachel Carson. And I contend that this dominant narrative that was formed was vastly different than the view that African Americans had, based on, just different lived experiences and different lives. So, we had the collective memory of slavery that I talked about before, and all of these bad things that happen in the outdoors. And I contend that, this might have shaped the way that African Americans view the outdoors today, and the ways in which outdoor activities are done. So I guess the example I want to talk about here is we had these outdoor recreation affinity groups that formed. And I think there's a few train of thoughts. One is, the outdoors is a place you go when you want to have solitude and be alone. I read the book Desert Solitude by I forget his name. Sorry if any of my professors are watching, but yeah, it's we have this idea of like the outdoors being a pristine place where it's quiet and peaceful. And I think that's drastically different from the view of participating in outdoor activities with a large affinity group of people. But I also think these groups emerged as something that was commonplace amongst people I talked to, because there's safety in numbers. You might not have to worry as much about the fear of racial conflict if you have 15 people behind you that have your back. So I think it's just largely, and this doesn't hold true all the time, but there's largely just, a differing way of viewing the outdoors. And I think we have to really respect those differences if we want to increase participation in the future. So from my research, I really wanted to come up with some recommendations to help environmental and outdoor professionals make their spaces more inclusive. So the first one is change marketing demographics for outdoor activities. You saw through some of those quotes that representation really mattered to the people in my studies. So I think it's important to be mindful that we're using images in our advertising that portray where we want to see our organizations go in the future. Next, there were a lot of people who maybe were just dipping a toe in the water to get introduced to the outdoors, and I think it's okay for us to realize that if we're starting off with outdoor activities, maybe we shouldn't start with a hike up Mount Everest, but maybe something that's closer to home, and that might be a little bit easier and rated for a beginner, so we can sort of be mindful and just patient of this progression through the outdoors. And then once we get people introduced to the outdoors, then maybe we can go on a big trip to Mount Everest and do some climbing up the mountain. Another one that I came up with was encourage different outdoor styles. We saw a wide range of definitions of what outdoor recreation is, and I think we should, rather, discourage someone from doing car camping and encouraging them to do backpacking. We should just, really encourage all of these different preferences and styles to the outdoors, in order to just create inclusive places. Having people outdoors using resources or experiencing your programs is always better than creating activities that feel somewhat exclusive. Another thing that really hit home to me was we had people who were experts at whatever their outdoor crafts was, and they felt like no one took them seriously. And I think this is partially due to the makeup of our organization sometimes. And I'm not saying that's an intentional thing, but I think we need to be intentional about getting our job postings out to a diverse candidate pool to really just try to have organizations that reflect the communities we wish to serve in the future. And then lastly, I think it's important to engage with key stakeholders with these diverse communities, to try to forge partnerships. And we saw how important these affinity groups were to people, and I think it's a natural avenue to connect with these groups and try to bring something to the table that they might request or they might need or make accommodations, so we can just use these affinity groups and these different stakeholders in diverse communities, to make sure that they know they feel welcomed. And I wanted to end on this. I won't spend too much time going through everything because I think we're running low on time, but the 5 E's of equity, this is something that I developed with a co-presenter a few months ago. And I think it really just summarizes the steps we can take to make positive change. So the 5 E's would be evaluate, educate, express, encourage, and engage. And I'll leave it here if anyone wants to take a deeper look and read some of these things. All right, so I guess, first I want to thank you all for sitting through my presentation for about the last 50 minutes, but I really wanted to, end on, there's no silver bullet to, suddenly make the world a better place where, everyone feels included and has the opportunities to reap the benefits of the outdoors. But I believe there is room for improvement. It's just, going to take a slow and deliberate approach where we can, really look at the people we're serving and their needs and how they differ. I think if we do those things in a really mindful, deliberate way, we can make improvements and make the outdoors more equitable for all. So with that, I will open it up to any questions that might have come in. Thank you all again.
Diquan, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent stuff. And really glad that you could be with us. And the people over here who have commented so far in the chat box agree. They think this was a fabulous presentation.
Well, no, thanks so much for that. I really appreciate it. And it's always cool when I can share some of the results I got from my research, because, I don't think anyone, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think people really enjoy reading a 100-page paper. And I just, want to make sure anyone who is, looking for these resources has a place to get them. So
I'm going to drop out of the screen share now. So it's back to us. And I'm going to throw some of the comments that we've got in the chat your way and get your response to them, or see what you think about what's happening. Yeah. So we've got, so the first one is we have more outdoor rec, tourism, and environmental justice folks who are on here, and they're very thankful for your work. Another user enjoyed learning about leisure constraints theory and moving past the barriers, especially the interpersonal constraints and the lack of partners.
Yeah.
It's more fun to enjoy the outdoors oftentimes when you've got somebody to go with you.
For sure.
And I'm imagining that it also feels safer.
Yeah, and I guess thinking back on that one, we see that there are these affinity groups that are out there to, encourage people of color and African American people to get outside and do stuff with the group. But we also see this other mindset where, people felt like they were the black sheep of their family and friend group. And so I think it just goes to say, if we can, that whole black sheep mentality creates a constraint, because, you might not have anyone in your immediate circle who enjoys the outdoors. So I think if we can introduce more people to these affinity groups that exist out there, we can, start creating, broader friendship groups or broader bubbles for these people, so we can, have partners to go outside with. Because you're right, Chris, it definitely does feel safer to have a group of people who, have your back when you're participating in something. You might be in a vulnerable situation, so.
All right, here's a question that's come in. What can environmental educators do to help break down barriers and increase participation in their programs?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I've kind of learned thus far is to, I guess it's a two-pronged thing. We have to keep in mind that, not every kid is going to be coming from a family who wants them to go outdoors and wants them to go play around in mud or do all of these things that I think are awesome, but some other people might not. So I think it's understanding the makeup of your communities and understanding their needs and really just try to like establish some relationship with the people in your program. So decide, what's the best course of action to go about this. I also think it's important. We saw this like dominant narrative about what the outdoors was, but then also what um, an outdoor enthusiast looked like. So I think it's really important to hire from those diverse candidate pools so we can um, bring in candidates who are reflective of the communities that we wish to serve. I think that's another big part of it.
Excellent stuff. Thank you. We've got another user who wants to know, are there professional networks for African-American outdoor professionals? You mentioned affinity groups.
Yeah, that's a great question. I haven't really explored that on a national level. I'm a part of a few groups, just that are more, I guess, grassroots per se, that do that. But if I had to guess, I would definitely say yes. And I think like Outdoor Afro is probably the largest affinity group for the outdoors, but I also think it's not just with them. For instance, it's not just about going outside and hiking. They really support all things outdoors. So I'm guessing there are networks and different events just within Outdoor Afro to help professionals. That's a great question, though. It's something I'll look into.
They can rewind the video, get your email address, and then
Yeah, exactly.
and connect. All right, let's see here. One of your recommendations is reaching out to key stakeholders in diverse communities. When we do this, how can we ensure that we do not become an unnecessary burden on these possible partners?
Yeah, that's another great question. And I think that's a difficult one. And I definitely think there's a fine line. And we need to be careful of, not crossing that line. I think one thing to start off with is, we can't assume what people need. And we also can't assume that we're the right organization or group to provide them with said needs. And I think the only way you get to know that is by doing things that start to create a relationship with these stakeholders. So it's probably not going to be the best practice to email out to someone who you've never talked to before and asking them for a favor, but rather maybe asking them to take time out of their day just so you can start to get to know these individuals. But yeah, I think that's a tough one, and something that I think we just really need to be deliberate and do our due diligence of doing the homework ahead of time to really putting in that work to establish relationships with people before getting into like business details.
Excellent stuff. Let's see. Thomas is asking, would love to know how, as a white person, to be an ally to persons of color who want to explore outdoor recreation.
No, another great question. I think I guess it's a common trend in the way I've answered these questions, but I think there's something to just being there and providing people with the support they need. Like I went on one trip and I was the only Black person in the group, and we drove by like a white supremacist rally on the way to this outdoor destination. And I remember the people I was with, they were just very supportive of, having to, drive by and witness that, asking if, they could support me in any way, or, um, just being a good, I guess, friend to people you do know, and being understanding, of these different leisure styles and preferences. I guess another thing that I'll say about these like leisure styles and preferences. I grew up in a family, and we didn't really do like traditional outdoor activities like hiking, or I don't think I've ever been, camping with my family. But we, for every, large family gathering outside, like a family reunion or a cookout, we were always, outside from dawn until dusk. And I have a lot of great memories from that. And that's still interacting with the outdoors. So yeah, I'd say if people of different cultures, this, and it will also vary for the individual, but just find out activities they like, even if they're not your traditional idea of a great time in the outdoors. Maybe give it a try with that person, and see where it goes. So
Great stuff. Okay, this looks like the last one, and we're over our time anyway, so I won't keep you much longer. Do you have time for one more?
Yeah, no, for sure.
Okay. Sean's asking, did your research show positive value in youth organizations? And did interviewees have positive stories from childhood as well as the tragic negative ones?
Yes. Oh man, I wish I could probably do a whole presentation about that. But yeah, the childhood interactions were really, really important. A lot of the times it happened from, while your family might not participate in, the traditional recreation activities as a whole, there were sometimes like one or two people in my interviewees' lives that did love those more traditional outdoor activities. And yeah, I heard a lot of spending time outside with grandma or grandpa, and they like to fish, so you would be out there fishing with them all the time. Or a lot of people who sort of grew up in, I guess, more rural areas in our country, and they were hunting for food and connecting with the outdoors through that, from their childhood. But then yeah, also I heard a lot about Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts. And although there were a few negative interactions with interacting with those youth groups as a kid. I think the one example I gave was someone using the N-word towards another person in my study. But there were also really, really, really positive experiences through those groups. I think even the story I told about the racial slur, that ended up in a good relationship with the kid who called him that. So it wasn't all, yeah, not by any stretch, it wasn't all negative. It was largely positive experiences that people had from childhood that encouraged them to get more involved in the outdoors throughout the rest of their lives.
Well, excellent stuff. Everybody in the chat is very grateful to you for the work that you're doing and for giving us this presentation.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Thank you all for tuning in and listening. And yeah, feel free to connect with me. So
perfect. Everybody, thanks for joining us for today's Lunchtime Discovery series. Diquan, again, thanks for sharing your insight and research and expertise. And thanks for doing the work that you do, getting people outdoors.
Yeah, no, thank you. It's cool stuff. So I'm always happy to share. So.
And next time we'll want to see more pictures of you kayaking. Here's some stories about Yellowstone, or or being
Next
out in the
time.
woods too.
Okay. Next time.
Next time. This was perfect. But well, I think we want to know more about Diquan too.
Yeah.
Get some of those
Okay.
good
That
stories.
sounds good.
And getting people outdoors.
Yeah.
We'll get the whole thing. Okay, that's enough of that. Thank you so much. Hey, everybody, make sure that you're checking out the Office of Environmental Education's website, eenorthcarolina.org, and you can follow them on Twitter at North Carolina EE. There you can get more information about future Lunchtime Discovery series presentations, what topics and guest speakers are coming up in the near future. We won't have a noon program next Wednesday, but we'll be back 2 weeks from now with another program. Again, eenorthcarolina.org for more information about the schedule of events. And you can follow the North Carolina Museum of Natural Sciences on social media. We're at Natural Sciences on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And naturalsciences.org is your source for all things museum related, events, programs, resources that you can take advantage of. Hope that you'll do that as well. Diquan, is there a place where people should look to connect with you, like social media, where they could learn more or follow the work you're doing?
Yeah, sure. My social media handle is Diquan, Diquan, Edmonds, Edmonds. I made it nice and easy for everyone to. So yeah, feel free to connect with me or shoot me a message or look me up on LinkedIn or something. So
excellent stuff. All right, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday. Have a great week. We'll see you next time. Bye, folks.